All right. Everything's recording. Beautiful. Welcome everybody to, I think the episode 5 or 6. No, I think it's 6 maybe of the solo episodes. VonSolo number 6. These have been quite the experience for me. I think it's a little bit different than the normal episodes where I have somebody in front of me to kind of bounce these ideas off of. It really pushes me to hold myself accountable to making sure I have enough to say, and that all these ideas that maybe aren't fitting for the interview style, I get to come do them here, and I really enjoy this. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and hopefully you get to get a little bit caught up in my life. I'm trying to remember back to when the last one of these ones I did, and kind of where I need to catch you guys up from. I think it was about a couple weeks ago, probably close to the start of the month now. It was almost a month ago, actually, now that I really think about it. I was off to Lloydminster to do my first kind of weekend of podcast episodes. I did that one in Slave, which was but I had a bunch of new equipment to try, a bunch of things. So I rolled out the Thursday to Edmonton, did that 4-hour drive, stayed over. My grandma wasn't doing too good at that point. So it was kind of one of those things where we're checking to see if even Lloydminster would be a go, or if I had to maybe spend some time back in Edmonton. But everything was kind of in flux, and I got there, and that night I found out that the first interview, the one that came out earlier this week, Andrew Mavridis, the MMA fighter, he had to move his time up a little bit. So we ended up having to leave, I think, Edmonton at 6 a.m. the next morning, drove all the way to Lloyd, got everything set up in a mad dash with this new equipment, didn't really know how to run it. It was very stressful. And I was behind. I've been, I'll get to it, but I've been a little bit out of sorts with my preparation and bringing things forward. And I have some ideas why, and I'd like to kind of, explore some of those on this forum with you guys, just to see, maybe just to talk to myself and see how honest some of those are, and maybe if I can find any more insights into it. But I wasn't doing the prep like I should have been, and I wasn't ready. I didn't have, usually I have this notebook in front of me where I have a bunch of questions written out, and I'd done the questions. I knew the questions that I wanted to ask. And like I say all the time, I usually don't even rely on this question. So it's not the most, ideal thing. I don't need these questions in front of me to be able to do this. Usually it's just a conversation, and it goes where it goes, and I really enjoy that. But I didn't have those ready. I didn't, the headphone situation I brought didn't work, so only I could wear headphones, and I was very stressed about it. But it ended up just being an amazing conversation. To finally be able to talk to somebody about MMA on that level was so much fun. We talked about all these different aspects of the fight game, got to talk about how the females have dominated the sport and where they're coming from. Got to do a little bit of a preview for Rose and Valentina and a couple of those of my favorite fighters that were coming up in events that have already gone by. It was really amazing. And just on that subject, I mean, to take a little bit of a detour, the fights last night, that Yuri Prohashka kid, he is something special. He's 28 years old. He's from the Czech Republic, and he's a samurai. I don't know, or what is, I don't know what his thinking is, but he follows this book. It's called The Book of Five Rings. I might actually have it here if I check my bookshelf. No, it must. Oh, it is too. Yeah, by Miyamoto Musashi. I wonder if I can pull it. No, I'll put the whole stack of books on its ass if I try and pull it out. But it's this book about the swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, who is from Japan and traveled all around, kind of a ronin, and was a philosopher and a calligrapher, and did all these different things, and was this amazingly lethal martial artist with a sword. He beat, I think, 60 men in one-on-one unarmed combat, not to mention all these wars he would fight for and different things. Like, he was just this untouchable martial artist, and he had a very strict philosophy of how he thought things should be done. And it was more so, it can be applied to anything. It doesn't have, it's very applicable to fighting in any sense, even if it's not sword fighting, as you can see with this prospect. But he kind of bases his whole life off that, and he's so interesting, and it gives him such a strong mindset to have something like that, that's such a strong base and belief and why, that really pushes you through. And that was something that I was talking about with Andrew, is just how much of fighting comes down to that why, and what are you fighting for, and what kind of ideas do you have? You see a guy like Brendan Schaub that came into MMA and was a football player, and was just really talented at fighting. He didn't love fighting. That wasn't why he wanted to do it. He was just trying to find the next thing, and this was something that could make him money, and he was good at it. It brought adulation, but it never really stuck as that thing that, like he seems to have found now with comedy and podcasting, where it matches up exactly with what he wants to do and has a really strong why behind it. So it's interesting to see that play out and to see a guy like Yuri Prohaska be able to come up and put that kind of show on to Dominic Reyes. Also, Dominic Reyes, look how tough that kid is. He's another one of those guys that came from football, but is just so extremely talented. But just, I honestly thought he had Yuri knocked out a couple times in that fight. Like, I was just going back and forth on it. Like, what is going on with this fight here? But just to see the level that's coming up and to see the light heavyweight division that was so dominated by John Jones for so long, and it seemed like it was kind of getting stale with things going on now with Jan Blachowicz and a guy like this Yuri, they're going to fight. I still think I have maybe Jan Blachowicz as the favorite in that when they go at it, but it was just an amazing way to cap it off. Giga Jikate, amazing Georgian fighter. It was the Georgian party last night. They brought out, he finished Cub really early with a kick to the body. We've seen Giga Jikate do that for years now, and just for him to come out afterwards and say that he was hoping to finish Cub to the body like that because he respects him so much, and Cub wants him, one of the best guys in the game. You love to see him, you hate to see him lose like that, but just the fact that he's still doing it on this level with how fast the game moves, it's just amazing. And he's such a good guy, and he loves his kids so much, and just it was sad to see him lose, but glad to see he didn't take any damage. And he had damages. I mean, hard to say you can't take any damage when you eat a kick like that from Giga Jikate. Ion Kutalaba, the freaking psycho Hulk guy that was being a goofball at the weigh-ins, throwing the guy around, always does that kind of shit, kind of a weirdo. Had a wild fight with Dustin Jacoby, was just mauling him the first round. These elbows, like in that empty Apex Center, was just cracking. The sound that it made was, it almost didn't make sense how loud these elbows were that he's dropping on this guy, but Dustin Jacoby just would not give up. And I think it's part of the anger of what Ion did to him at the weigh-ins, where he grabbed him by the neck and kind of threw him around, and you could hear Dustin Jacoby saying, "There's no way I let you beat me tomorrow, no way." And he was so fired up, and I wonder it seemed like in that first round he would just, by sheer force of will, not going out to those elbows because he knew he would not lose to this guy because of what he did. And then he came out and won the next two rounds, but I think that first round was a 10-8 for Kutalaba. So it ended up coming out a draw. That was wild. Sean Strickland had a wild fight. Marab, one of my favorite fighters at 135, another Georgian. I always tell my best friend Chase that he's his future favorite fighter. I think he's going to be fighting for the title in the next couple of years. Just such a good guy, so funny, so cheerful all the time, but just an absolute savage in there. They call him the Machine, and he does not stop. He has amazing striking, amazing wrestling, amazing just interstitial work, cage work, clinch work, everywhere he's good. But he puts on a pace that would put so many guys to shame. Like it's wild to watch him do it, and to do it with a smile on his face half the time. He's such an interesting little guy. I love him. I shouldn't call him a little guy. I mean, he fights at 135, but he kicked my ass. Then we had the Canadians on the undercard. It was tough to watch. KB Buller, one of my I just cheer for this guy so hard because he's such a interesting cat. He's a doctor. He comes from a great family. He's extremely, extremely talented, but he seems to be to me, and what do I know from the outside looking in, but it seems like he's one of those guys that needs to find his why and needs to find that love of the fighting and love of the war and the violence of it, because he seems like he has all the skills in the world, but just that one level that he's just outside the realm of the violence that the fighting needs to take place in. And you can tell that he's throwing the techniques, but he doesn't want, it almost seems like he doesn't want to hurt people, and he doesn't want to get hurt himself. And that's just one of those things where maybe it's not in him, but then also on that fact, if they threw in this Andreas Makalidis guy from Greece, who is an absolute destroyer. In the first fight against KB Buller, who did they throw him? Another buzzsaw, but I don't know. It seems like to me, and this is me completely speculating, completely guessing, is that the UFC do not want this guy to do well for whatever reason. I mean, maybe that's just the level of the UFC, and you don't get an easy fight when you come in and you're just going to get thrown to the wolves like this. But the two guys that they've thrown him right off the start just seems absolutely ridiculous. I don't know. Like, it just seems to me, and what my guess would be is that he's a doctor. He's super intelligent, right? Probably knows what he's worth, knows where his talent level is not, I would guess, probably not the easiest guy to negotiate with, because he has a good head on his shoulders and has other options on the table, and probably wants, to be treated a certain way. And probably the UFC doesn't like that. They want you to come in and prove to them what you're worth, not to come in asking for anything. I don't know if that's the thing, but I just can't understand how he's not matching up with, some guys on their debut that, are maybe on his level or a little closer to it. And I wonder if a guy like KB Buller might have been better off starting in a different organization. I mean, he was amazing in other organizations already, but maybe just there was one stepping stone before the UFC that he needed to take before that, because everybody's journeys are different and you can never count out these people. We've seen amazing people come to the UFC, lose a couple fights, go figure it out other places and come back and look like a destroyer. Look at Robbie Lawler, look at I think Rumble Johnson was out of the UFC for a bit and came back and destroyed. There's so many guys. If I had more time to think about it, I just came up with 2 guys and say there's so many, but I promise. I just watched the top 10 MMA comebacks of guys that got cut from the UFC and came back just the other day on the treadmill. And so the story's there, and maybe that's one of those guys. So it was tough to see. The other Canadian fighting on the card, Ronda Marcos, I don't know how to pronounce it. Another Canadian, was a really tough look, was fighting this Luana Pinheiro. I think she's from Brazil maybe, and was close fight, really action-packed. I think maybe Ronda Marcos was on the losing side of it, but she gave Pinheiro an up kick to the face from down the point. She was on her back, kind of the typical, this was my move from probably like 2 years old to about like 13 years old, of just, lay on your back and kick those feet like crazy. That would what I'd do if my sister would come after me. I don't know. I think every kid knows that move. But that's what you're thinking about, and just caught her clean on the face with that when she was on her knees. If somebody's standing in front of you, you can do that because they're in a fighting stance. They should be able to protect themselves. When a fighter's on their knees as well, they figure they're a grounded opponent and you can't upkick them in the face. In the body, it's fine. Anyways, makes this connection in real time. It looked like it kicked her. She sat her back on her ass, and then she went back and then threw the arms back and went down and had to be carried out of the cage by her coach, was just absolutely out of it. Like, you'd think, we just saw Kamaru Usman knock Masvidal into the goddamn shadow realm, and he was able to talk later, right? And everybody reacts differently, but in the moment I thought, that was fishy. That did not seem real. Just of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fights that I've watched, I guess at this point, you just have a interior tell that says like, oh, that didn't seem right, that didn't seem natural. But then you watch it on the replays in slow-mo, and it's a hard kick to the face, and she was buggered up. And I feel like this is another one of those cases. I just talked about it on the Andrew Mavridis pod, about the situation where, in a situation where somebody does something that would disqualify them, right? Throws an illegal blow and it connects. It's so silly to put it on the fighter, because now they have to act, because now this Luana Pinheiro, she just took this illegal blow. She didn't do anything wrong, knows that she's compromised, and that if she continues, she'll be in a really rough spot, but knows that if she says, no, I can't continue, she's going to get all this shit thrown at her. And it just puts you in a bad spot, and it forces them to go out and act, which I'm sure is what's going through her head. And I think there's also a bit of it where the situation and almost like the power of the mind, or like the placebo effect of, hey, I know I need to be very hurt right now for me not to take, undue pounding from the fans. And MMA fans are not the nicest fans. Anybody that follows the sport any little bit will tell you that. They're ruthless. And I think it just put her in a rough spot. It reminded me very much of the Aljamain Sterling situation, where there has to be a bit of acting, because you want, like, truly, if you're compromised, but sometimes that doesn't show it enough, or it doesn't show, if Pinheiro, is damaged, can't continue, but then 2 minutes later is fine and walking around and talking on the mic, people are going to say something. So then she has to go totally over the top to the point where she just won't ever focus her eyes. She's just darting around, kind of like doing like the Bambi on the ground, which happens if you get really badly knocked out, right? And doing all this stuff, and can't answer any questions. No, doesn't know what it is, doesn't know who she is, where she's at, right? Like, completely, and gets carried out by her coach over his shoulder and all this stuff. And it's like, man, all I see in that is that we need to figure out a better way where we're not putting this on the fighter. The only reason all those theatrics happen is because that situation is put onto the fighter. I don't know what a better way is. We discussed some ideas of this, but I just don't like it. And poor Ronda Marcos, the Canadian chick, she's just sitting there crying. She didn't mean to kick her in the face in that situation. She's just in a fight. Like, something needs to be done there. It's not the best way to be done. It's a professional sport with all this money. There's so much eyes on it. We need to be better in some of these areas. And I know it's an evolving sport and it's getting better and we're figuring these things out little by little, but it's tough to watch. Anyways, I mean, now that I'm on my UFC kick, I mean, I was trying to give you guys an update on my life and start with the trip to Lloyd, but I'm just really passionate about the sport. So it was an awesome experience. I really hope that you guys liked it. The Andrew Mavridis, the MMA fighter that I interviewed from Lloyd, is coming out tomorrow. I'm recording this Sunday. and by the time this comes out, that you guys have already listened to it, hopefully. So I hope you really enjoyed that one. I was really proud of that talk, and just, I always thought that if I could get in front of somebody that knew MMA really well, I could comport myself well and really make a good showing of my knowledge of the sport and my passion for the sport, and hopefully hope that would come through. And it was frustrating not to have too many opportunities to show that. And I feel that MMA is just one of those areas. There's so many areas I feel that about, and I just need the right chance or the right guest, or get better at doing it solo, so that these ideas, I'm unrestricted. I'm not gated by any way of having a guest. If I get good enough at talking to myself like I am right now, and talking into a camera, that I can just bring my passion forward and not need somebody to volley it off of. But so that was amazing. Just to take you guys back, this is Lloydminster. That is Friday morning. Got up early, 6 a.m., drove all the way there, had a really fast setup of all the equipment. So recorded this amazing episode. Andrew left, and then it was, okay, let's pull everything off and make sure that I got it recorded, because I'd never used this equipment before. I didn't know if it worked. I pull off his episode. It worked. It all recorded, but it put both of us onto the same track. So if I need to do it, luckily there's no real editing needed. We just sat there and the conversation flew by. I don't even think there's a bathroom break to get it out. If there is, I think I missed it, and you guys might have to sit through a bathroom break. I don't know. But we'll see. But that was no problem. So then the next couple of hours before the next one, I think the next one was at 5:00 with Tanner Applegate and Ken Rutherford. I knew I had to figure out exactly how to run all this equipment that I just bought, this Rodecaster, this, it's like a mixer and records things, and all the mics plugged in, all the headphones. Anyways, but I wanted to do it separate tracks. So I go on Google, I look it all up, I figure out how to get it set up, test it with my girlfriend, we hop on, and I can't figure out how to get it so it doesn't take every track on the board. So now when I figured out how to do it, and it would separate into separate tracks, but there'd be about 10 different tracks all recording at high level, so that, you record half an hour and it's already like 4 gigabytes because of so many tracks recording. I can't find a way to turn off, but whatever, this will work. So go through, record that episode. This is just some foreshadowing for stuff to come in the future here, but 5:00 rolls around. I think we grabbed some quick lunch, said hi to the family. They were in and out with the Hancock family that had just an amazing weekend for us, rolled out the red carpet, had everything set up so I could podcast, and dinners and drinks and just good quality time. I really needed that weekend. But so saw them during the day, and then Tanner and Ken showed up, had another amazing interview. Tanner and Ken have a podcast called The War on Weakness, and it's very interesting. They talk about a lot of things, a lot of the COVID stuff, a lot of just the way that society is getting weaker, kind of the attack on masculinity and what it means to be a man, and not, some of the ways you might think of, being polite, standing up, chivalrous, almost chivalry. Like it's they're fighting for a lot of values that I think are lost today, and really need to be brought back into the fold of what we're seeing. And I really saw that, especially, and I don't even want to say especially, because they both do this in their own ways, right? Like Tanner is very gruff. Like when you hear his voice, from the second that podcast starts, you'll know who Tanner is. He wears it on his sleeve. He rolled up in a fucking sick ass old Ford, and I think it was a Ford anyway, loud and mean. He calls it a dick magnet because he says, yeah, no, chicks always hate this truck, but the guys always love it. And it was exactly true. And he's a hard guy and has a lot of expectations of what people should be and what men should be, and has done a lot of reading of history and has seen the negative effects of living your life in a way that is soft can have, and what that deteriorates into, and when societies become soft as a whole, what those effects are and what that leaves the door open to. And I think he sees it and is very worried about that, and tries to bring people on board by leading by example and showing how hard he can be, and that type of thing. And then you have Ken, who also sees those same things, sees those trappings, but is just so genuine and full of goodness. I think I said it on the podcast. This will come out before their podcast, but I think I said it. I compared it to a family from Slave Lake, and I hope it's okay that I use their names. I mean, they might not like it, but who cares? The Stasso family is just a family that is so genuinely good and just always do the right thing and are funny and kind and want to help people. And I just love that about people. And I thought I could hear that. You never want to assume that you know who somebody is just through a podcast. There's always things that they're withholding. And you never know how genuine. You want to hope that you can tell how genuine somebody's being, but you never know. But I always thought that me and Ken would really connect. And I thought we would just have amazing conversations, because I also lead with love and believe that that is the solution, and to many of the same problems. And the way that Tanner was framing them, I feel like both me and Ken saw the same problems and really appreciate his outlook on it, but maybe just have a little bit of a different idea on how to get there. And it was awesome to have that conversation. Really enjoyed it. Was there, and actually Ken had his daughter there too, and she, sat patiently while we podcasted for a couple hours. And then after, Tanner had to head out, and me and Ken just kept bullshitting. We're talking about a lot of things, what's happening in Alberta, how to stand up, and kind of what we could do. And both talked about how we were feeling a little bit not ashamed of ourselves, but just that we could do more, right? We both have our podcast. We're both trying to send this message and spread what we think is right, but it always felt like we could do more. And I was really impressed with his daughter, because after the fact, she really chimed in and is an amazing, bright young lady. I'm curious to see what she does in the rest of her life, which I'm not surprised by at all. I think Ken has 6 kids, and really is family oriented and wants the best for them, and takes them traveling, and really is doing, I think I've talked about it on the podcast, one of the things I've learned in the last couple of years is just a real, not concerted effort, but just a genuine awe, or I'm so inspired by what it is to raise a good kid. I've talked about it, seeing my cousins all start to have kids, and what they can do, and how much guidance you can have on who that little child is that grows up. Because obviously every kid comes out of the box different, and you're going to have to just deal with what that is, and try and find out who that person is and how to support them. But I just think of all that I could ever do on this earth, and I plan to do a lot of things, and I plan to change a lot of things and change the world and be a positive impact and leave a mark on the world that I'm proud of. But I don't think that's going to hold a candle to what I hope to do by having kids with somebody that I love, that also thinks this way and understands the gravity of it, and to see what my kid's going to be able to do. And I feel like Ken really embodies that, and wants to make a difference with what he's doing right now, but never lets his totem pole of how he's ranking these things fall from his family at the top. And I really admire that. And it was so much fun to talk to him, and I learned so much from him, and just had an amazing day. So that was kind of my Friday. It was whirlwind. We left, once they left, it was late, and I went into the house and had a plate of dinner from the Hancocks. They had it all ready for me, because I was, working all day and didn't have time to eat. And then we just had a couple beers around the fire, and got to catch up with the kids and see what they're up to, play some guitar. It was amazing. I had a great day the next day. Saturday was Jason Hancock's birthday, who we were staying with, just kind of a second father figure. We are in the same industry, talked a lot of work with him. Me and him, it's we don't do the same thing. He's definitely many steps ahead of where I am, but we're in a It's interesting, because he was always kind of an uncle figure, a second father figure, kind of the fun uncle kind of guy, a little bit younger than my dad, but in the same industry. His dad also was in the fuel industry, and very much mirrored my journey a little bit, and just had certain areas where me and him can connect on. And it's been fun these last couple of years, probably the last 4 years since I've entered the business and been doing it myself, to be able to talk shop and bounce ideas off each other and bitch a little bit. And we just had an amazing day on Saturday. We got to take the full tour of Lloyd. He showed me all the industrial sections, the new refineries, the upgraders we're up against, all these kind of things, with his son, Cale, who I've known since he was, 1 foot tall, and got to see him grow into who he is. And a couple years ago showed him how to play guitar, and he's just taken that so far and is such an amazing little guitar player now, and a little ladies man, and a good person too, and is exciting to kind of see him catching his feet, as well as his younger sisters, who are just, I feel like I was never around a lot of kids. I was always the baby of the family, and I always was the one that nobody would listen to, and was kind of just the silent assassin from the outside, that just every once in a while I'd say something that people would laugh at or would listen to, but it was rare and far and few between, with a lot of big personalities. And I feel like I didn't get to experience who kids are and what kids are a little bit. And I feel like with the Hancocks, that was the first time I got to experience that with their kids, and see out of the box how different all three of them are, right? Like knowing their family, knowing their parents very well and where they come from, and then seeing the kids and what pieces of those kids are in both their parents, and then what pieces just come out of nowhere. Because I always kind of thought that, who a kid is and their personality is going to be a mixture of some of that comes from the dad, some of that comes from the mom. But what I learned with those kids is there's definitely a lot of that, but then there is some stuff that is just so uniquely you and to that person that is right out of the box. And you are just, there's nothing you can do to change that. If you try and change that, it's not going to go well. And you just need to find ways to let that flourish and to encourage that. And I feel like that's what their family does an amazing job at, is just letting those kids be who they are. And I feel like that I've learned a lot about in the future when I have kids and how I want to raise them. I feel like I want to do that as well. And I feel like that was something that I struggled with a lot as a kid. I feel like I always just I knew who I was. And I struggled a lot in high school and junior high, elementary school, right? Like if you talk to them, I'm very curious to maybe have some teachers on to talk to them now about who I was then, because I was just such a wild little child and I didn't want to listen to anybody. You could not prove to me something was worth my time to learn unless I could figure it out myself, or if it was genuinely interesting, right? Like when we would learn in social classes on wars and stuff, I was all in. I wanted to learn everything about it. But if it didn't capture my interest, I was going to do the bare minimum to learn it to get a good grade. It was like always this balance of, I hate school. I think this is so phony. I hate every second of it. I hate the teachers. I hate everything. And then also this, if I don't have at least an 85 average, 90 average, I'm going to get so much shit coming home that it was like, okay, what is the bare minimum I can do to achieve this grade and not be in shit with my teachers too much for causing too much havoc, and, guide that line and be a bit of a bullshitter and not make their life too miserable, know when to back it off, know when the class clown stuff has gone too far, and when teachers genuinely angry and it's not just fun and games anymore. And, it was interesting, but I feel like that was one of those things where, if maybe somebody had realized that earlier of just, maybe what I was capable of at those times, and had taken me to, okay, what do you want to learn? And just help me get better and help show me areas. Like I was thinking about this with hockey the other day. I didn't like hockey and I never learned. I was never very good because I didn't really care. And I didn't feel like the coaches really knew what they were talking about and really had anything to teach, and it was just more fun. I was just trying to get through all the practices so that I could go play the games on the week, because the games are so much fun. I loved the sport of hockey, but I hated all the practicing and all this stuff. And I didn't believe that what we were practicing was helping in any way. Like, I don't know. I felt this in so many areas. I think I had such a little ego, even from the time I was a little kid. And I just felt so certain that I knew more than everybody else, and that I didn't need to listen to them, or listening to them was going to be a waste of my time, that I never truly got better at things. Or I would get really good at things, but only I get really good at things that I could do on my own with no teaching, and just dedicate myself to because I was interested in it. Those things I would excel at, right? Like whether it was a video game or I don't know what else, or something I could use the internet to kind of teach myself, guitar and that type of thing, or yo-yo, or anything that was just a weird personal obsession that you could take on. I was great at it, but if it was something that needed to be passed on through school or any of those things, I really struggled with it. Anyways, where was I going with that? All that. Oh yeah, the Hancock family. This is where we go on all the tangents, these solo episodes. So I'm really impressed with what that was, and just had an amazing day all Saturday, enjoying Jason's birthday and his kids and his family, and just what he's created over there in his years is something I really look up to and hope to achieve myself one day. And then had an amazing podcast that night, Saturday night. I guess I missed a step. We watched the Oilers game, watched the Oilers win. That was amazing. And then had a podcast with Sean Newman, who Sean Newman is a guy out of Lloydminster. He started a podcast, I want to say, early 2018. So he's been doing it a couple of years now. He's got, I think, over 160 episodes, and he also does these things called, I can't remember, it's like the Heritage Series or something like that, where they have older people in the Lloydminster community that they have on that have a really crazy story or something. Sometimes it's a 100-year-old or an 80-year-old guy that has seen it all, and those ones are really interesting to me as well. And he's also had on some really big guests, and has had guys like Paul Bissonnette and Tanner Bozer in the fight world, Ray Ferraro, Braden Holtby, like the list goes on and on. Almost everybody in the Alberta hockey world, like of what that is, and would know kind of the lane that I'm talking about. He has had some of the biggest names on, which is super cool to me to see, right? And that's something that I look up to. And he would talk about, I'm just the same guy as you, Nick. Like, it's nothing different. I just think, it is, you've done some cool things that I want to do as well. And he had some real tough questions for me about why I'm not doing the same, and why I'm balancing what I'm balancing, and some of the excuses I have for the things that I'm doing. And I feel like I had a lot of answers. I was really disappointed in myself that I wasn't able to comport myself as good as I wanted to and answer those questions in the way I wanted to back up my full idea, because I've thought a lot about these things, and I think there is a lot of excuses, but then I think there's a lot of ways that I am doing these things calculated, and I am waiting on, bringing on advertisers, which is another big thing I want to talk about today, but bring on advertisers and really chasing down big guests and stuff. And it's just one of those things where I feel like I finding Ayn Rand and the Fountainhead and reading that story. There's a character in it named Howard Rourke, and he's probably the main character, the ideal of kind of what Ayn Rand is trying to put forward. And he's this architect who has this beautiful vision of what things need to be and what buildings are, and just has this, he's so confident in his eye and his vision and what he can build, and just so disappointed with what the market brings out, and just the classic rehashed, Gothic columns and all this stuff, and these certain styles, like your traditional style, your Greco-Roman style, your whatever, all these different styles of architecture. And he just said, like, no, that's not what you go to. You have to take the environment, the land, the building of what you're trying to build, find this essence of the soul, make it utility wise the best that it can be, design the space functionally to be the best that it can be, and the beauty will follow. You're going to see the beauty in the utility of it. But he goes through his life and really struggles because he does not bend to anybody, right? They offer him money, they offer him fame, they offer him all this stuff because clearly he's a very talented guy, but he says no to it all because he wants to stick to his value. And that was so much of, I felt so amazed reading this book because it was so much of how I feel, but I'd never been able to articulate it that way. And it was even with this podcast of like, sure, I want to, when you compare what Sean's doing and getting those guests on it, and he is relentless. When he wants one of those guests on, he, goes after them in all these different ways, emails them, DMs, this way, trying to get in touch with their agent, which I love. And I love the tenacity of that. And I think that's probably going to be somewhere where I'll be eventually. But I also have this other piece of me that says, I'm so cocksure of what this podcast is going to be one day, and not just the podcast, but everything else I'm going to do and all the big plans I have around it, that I don't want to go out and force somebody to want to come on and really twist their arm. I want to do it in the right way and to build naturally and hopefully get a couple breaks like I have. Like I just had my first, not my first ex-NHL player, my first ex-Oiler on the podcast. Another member from Lloydminster. I think that's gonna, as I said, I'd mentioned this in the intro of the podcast on Monday, but I think that's going to give people a little bit better guesses. I'd put a little thing up on my Instagram story of trying to guess who my first ex-Oiler was. And I think letting people know he's from Lloydminster is probably going to narrow it down. But anyways, and that was because a family friend had a connection there, knew him from Lloyd and put in a good word, and he was willing. He was an awesome guy. So much fun. It was such a cool experience to be able to ask in a very similar vein to what I was talking about with Andrew, getting to talk MMA. It was cool to be able to talk hockey with a ex-NHL player that played, 10 plus seasons, 12 seasons in the NHL, playing big roles and had big moments. That was so much fun, and it was so natural, but I didn't have to chase him down. It was something that, and I hope that I comported myself on that episode well, and that in the future, if I want to have another ex-NHL player on, I can point to that and say, hey, look at the episode I did with X, and say, this is the type of interview I want to have. It's not going to be your cookie cutter. I'm going to ask what interests me. And we can talk a lot about, your career and who you played with and stuff. But I think guys like Spit and Chicklets and Sean Newman, who has had the same guy on, this is another hint. Sean Newman's had him on as well. And they're great at that, of going through exactly what their career was and how many points and kind of the steps and that. And we talked about a little bit of that when I talked to him too, but it was more my questions about what they see in hockey and what parts are interesting to them, what evolutions to the game are they seeing, like what is the mindset, what is making the game evolve at such a rapid pace, what is making young guys come in, is it the strength and conditioning, is it this, is it that? And that's what's interesting to me, and I hope that that's what comes through. But I'm going to prove to people that I deserve to have them on and have people want to come on, because that gives them a type of interview that is so genuine and so unlike anything else that's cookie cutter that they're going to want to. And that is the battle that I have. And I don't think I articulated that enough with Sean, that I felt comfortable. I felt a little bit disappointed in myself, but also the way I really liked what Sean was doing on that podcast, and he really forced me into some answering some questions for myself that I think I was refusing to answer for a while because I didn't want to know the answers, particularly about work and balancing having a full-time job and a podcast that you're passionate about, that you do believe in and want to make your full-time job eventually. And Sean's doing that right now and has been doing that for years. He works for Baker Hughes selling chemical and has found an amazing way to balance that, his full-time job, his podcasting job, and his family, right? He's got kids and that, and it's something I really look up to, is finding that balance, because I'm struggling enough with running a business and this podcast at the same time. And I have so many ideas on how to find a better management and to put things in place that are going to help find that balance in more of a natural way that I haven't put forward. And it's all on me, and I know them. And something that kind of was thinking maybe talking about on this podcast as well was kind of the ideas I have for that balance and where I could bring that. But it was interesting to see his mindset on it, how he's thinking about it, how that matches up with my mindset and how it's different for me. And it was a very interesting conversation, and it really got my mind turning, and it's been turning ever since on some of the subjects we talked about. And you guys will see more once that episode releases on exactly what those conversations were and those questions that he asked so expertly. He's been doing it a little longer than I have, and he clearly has, the nose for getting into some of these subjects. And I think also just the fact that he's in such a similar position that he knows the questions to ask, because he's there and he's feeling these same things, right? And he's probably had these conversations in his head, when he was, 10 months into the podcast. I think I started June 21st, and it's May. Yeah. So I've got sub 10 plus months of podcasting, where he was probably at 10 months into his journey and thinking these exact same things and a little bit further along. But it was very interesting to me to hear that. So had an amazing podcast with him that night. Next morning, hopped in the hot tub with the Hancock family, played guitar, shot some guns, did so much fun stuff with them all Sunday. We didn't want to leave. And then found out, my grandma wasn't doing very well at all. Something that I was aware of, and we'd been working on as a family, kind of going through it, and then hearing that, better not. So the plan was to drive all the way back to Grand Prairie that day on Sunday, but it seemed better go to Edmonton, and we were all taking shifts, making sure that my grandma wasn't alone. We were trying to work on getting her full-time care and all these things, and working through some things, but we found out that better head back to Edmonton. That's what we heard. So that's what I did Sunday night, headed back to Edmonton, got to see my family again, talk to my dad and mom, and get a little bit of what the story was and kind of what's going on, what the plan is. And they said, hey, can you, do 9 o'clock till noon? We have a nurse there till 9, but then somebody needs to be with her from 9 till noon. And then my mom was going to come there. So yeah, no problem. It'd be great to go see my mommy and spend the morning with her. I wasn't really sure what I was walking into and what point. And so went over there in the morning, me and Alyssa, and just had the most amazing day with my grandma. It was I'm gonna get a little teary here. Just an amazing morning, just cracking jokes, and her German friend was there, and we were playing cards and talking and telling stories, and just got to hear how ready Ami was to be onto the next journey of life, and to get to hear her speak about how proud of the family that she's created was, and all us kids and grandkids and great grandkids, and just how special that was to her to be able to fully realize her dream. She had quite the life. It was one of my regrets was not getting her on the podcast to be able to hear some of her stories, but she's just I don't think it would have had the gusto to go through a couple hours of grilling from me in the last little while. But I'm sure through the rest of the family that I'm going to have on at times, we'll get to hear more of the stories and maybe get to give you guys a full idea of just who she was as a person, because she was so amazing and just so strong. So after the war in Germany, her and my grandpa both, my grandpa came over first on a boat, a couple bucks in the pocket, landed on the east coast of Canada, hopped on a train, made it out to, I think, Lloydminster, Alberta, and was there for a while. Funny how things come full circle like that. And worked on a farm, whatever he could do, made enough money to be able to send my grandma out here. Again, no English, didn't know how to get here. So same thing with Ami. She comes over, ends up in Lloydminster, the time changed. There's some crazy stories there, and they were supposed to get married right then, but no, I think there was one person in Lloyd that spoke German that they found and was able to help her out, translate a little bit and get them connected. And they were married not long after they got there, worked on farms, did odd jobs, got enough money, had some really special people in their life that, you know, when you're a good person, you work hard like that, you're going to have things that go your way. And they also had amazing hardships that they went through, but just to be able to build themselves up to the point where they could have their own farm and to start their own family, and the kids that they raised, my aunties and my dad, on a pig farm in Sangudo with, you know, started from nothing and built everything that they had. By the end of I hear the stories of, they sold the farm when I was, I think, 1 or 2 years old. So I never really got to experience it, where all the older cousins and my sister got to have a few memories, some more than others, there. But they had built this amazing farm up that was very successful and productive and all this. But they started with absolutely nothing, and just to know what they went through, and to know Alberta back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, like, that is a hard life to live, and just to go through it with such grace and such love and the humor that comes out of it. This is something I made a post. Some people might have saw it about my grandma, just how she would come through with humor, because the German culture is so hard, and to know what their journey was, there was not a lot of time, there was not a lot of sympathy around. And I think as a softer kid myself, I struggled with that, because Ami and Pups didn't have time for your bitching complaints. You know, you're not happy about this or that, because they went through the hardest shit. You know, you think this is hard. Try, you know, escaping from Germany, going to a country with no language, and just, you know, guys, I'm sure you guys know the story in your own way. And that was tough for me. And they had absolutely no time for fat people, let me tell you. And I know this is one of those things, probably some people, you know, fat shame, one of those things. That's just the culture you grow up in, right? Like, when you are starving or working so hard to ensure that you don't starve, right? Like, that is quite the idea, to see people, you know, have other issues and that. And I struggled a lot with that, you know, being around them as a kid and going through that, and to get older and to see where that comes from and have some respect for it, and to realize how much, and with all those things in mind, to know just how loved you were. And it almost seemed like it was the love that Ami and Pups would show to everybody, not just their family, but those that were, you know, the farm family and the extended family and the family back in Germany. There was so much love there, and so much love of a good time, and a love for people, but a love of life, and a love of enjoying it. And they were always, you know, there was so many stories you'd hear of the farm and the hardships and the harvest and the hogs and all that stuff. But then there was also the stories of the parties and the fucking rippers that they'd go on and come back at 6 a.m. and have all their chores and have to go with no sleep back to working on the farm. And that there was always such a light for people that went through such darkness. There was always such a light and a love for life that was just so amazing. And so to spend that day and to get to see all that and to hear it reflected, all these things that, you know, I always talk about the stuff of knowing things, but not having the language for, and, you know, I was not at peace, but I feel like I got, whereas when Ami's husband, Pups, we lost him, it was a lot faster. He was doing really well, him and Ami, and he was hit by a car on a walk, and kind of his downhill spiral happened a little bit faster. And I feel like a lot of the same things with Ami that I got to see with him was, you know, that strength and all that stuff. You knew that was there, and you got to experience it. But with Ami, to be able to spend that whole day and to get to hear from her mouth, her articulate these things that you always knew were there, but just the satisfaction and the pride and the love for her family, and how not scared she was at the end, and how powerful that was. And for somebody like me that was dealing with not anybody in my family, but, well, it is family, but one of my best friends, someone I'm really close with, went through a really tough loss this year, and through all that, and trying to be there for them. And I'm an empathetic person. You know, if you're on my team, I ride for you till the death, right? Like if you are in my inner circle, you're just like family, and to see that and to try and be there for someone was tough. And I was reading a lot, listening to a lot of podcasts on death, and reading a lot of books. I talk about it all the time. The Worm at the Core, again, not in my bookshelf, and Don't Think About Death by Gary Laderman were two books that really were instrumental this year in helping me understand not only what death is and our own mortality, but what an effect it has, and how harmful it is to hide yourself from that fact. It's the scariest thing in the world to think about, the fact that you could die today. You could die tomorrow. You could get hit by a car. You could get COVID. All these things that is around you all the time. It's one of the scariest things you can do. So you don't think about it, and what an effect that has, and how that manifests itself in all these other areas of your life. And you can see it when somebody goes through a loss. You see all these different people react to it, and how in touch or out of touch with that idea of loss and death and what that is there, and all the manifestations that you read about in those books, and you get to see it in front of you. But having said all that, to know that is the hardest journey, and to see somebody like Ami, who you always knew was that strongest person, but it doesn't matter how strong you are, you can be strong in all these other areas of your life. At the end, confronting your own mortality is the scariest journey anyone can take. And essentially, this is one way to look at it, but your life can almost be looked at as just preparing you for that last journey, right? You're just getting better and better in all these things, and facing down these fears, and facing your fears, and getting outside your comfort zone to be ready at the end to go on that one last journey. And to see her do it with such strength, and strength for everyone else, and to hear all these people from Germany, all this family calling, then I'd answer the phone to try to figure out what they're saying through tears and German accents to find out who it is and pass it on me, and then hear her, tell them, no, don't cry, that this is, for the best. I have an amazing family. This is beautiful. This is what I want. This is not a sad thing. Be happy. Just be happy for life. And again, getting a little teary here. It was an amazing experience. I'm so thankful that I got that whole day on that Monday to spend that time, and to get to just do the fun things like playing cards. And if you know Ami, she had to have her smokes, and she smoked to the fucking day she lost. The day we lost her, she smoked. And to, just play cards and crack jokes and all this stuff. And then it was, okay, well, and she wasn't moving too good. So I'd take her from the table and move her over to the, to the window there, and get her all piled up with jackets because it was cold outside. Open the door, crack, let her have her smoke, and cracking jokes the whole time. This is the thing you guys have to get. That Monday was, from the time I walked in to the time I left that Monday, was nonstop jokes. Whether it was just us there or the other people that came in later in the day, it was funny. And to know that you can go through something like that, and probably was some fear underneath, but to have that humor, and to know that, Ami's going through so much pain and so much suffering, but the moments she would forget about it was when you can make her laugh, and you can see her face light up, and all this stuff. And we were playing cards, and she's falling asleep at the card table. And every time it's funny every time to wake her up, because she was just, to know she's so frustrated with her body failing her, and to know that her mind is so sharp, and just, it was always sharp as a tack, and quick as a whip. But it was till the end, and to know that was still there, and to see her frustration with, it wasn't the fact that mentally she wasn't there. It was just that her body was, had 91 hard years, and farming years, and all that, and smoking years, right? Like, she knew, and she knew that she had lived life amazingly, and was so satisfied with what she had done, that that's what would matter. But yeah, didn't miss a smoke that day, made sure she got all hers, and just, and the day took a toll on her, and seeing all the action, and we had an amazing lunch. I hadn't seen her probably in 6 months eat the kind of meal she had for lunch that day. Just, I don't know what it was, of just, she was having a good day. And I'm, again, so thankful that me and Alyssa got to have that day with her. That was, probably one of her best days in the last, few months that I got to see, of the time that and I don't want to speak for anybody else's experience, but it was amazing to see, and amazing to have that. So yeah. So that was kind of that whole weekend, and a wrap up, right? Didn't go at noon. I think we stayed there right till probably like 6 o'clock that night. And my parents got there. My mom got there at noon and had lunch with us. And then my dad got there later, and a couple other people had, come in and out throughout, and nurses and all these things. And all that stuff. But just to have that much of an experience, have that full day, from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. With her, and have it be, so many games of cards and so many, and we brought my guitar, and she loved that I play guitar and would sing, and my voice was absolutely destroyed from that. It was destroyed earlier. Like I lost my voice a ton, and it's something I struggle with a lot because I know I want to chase this dream of being a podcaster, and I know my voice is so finicky, and so I lose it so easy. I will tell you the story on some other time of how I wrecked it in university, but I wrecked it really bad a couple years in a row. And ever since, I lose my voice very easily, and it's something I've been worried about. So I was losing it for 2 weeks leading up to this Lloydminster trip, and I was just terrified. I'm drinking tea and having halls and doing all these things for my breath, for my voice. And then, I'm getting frustrated when I have to talk to people at work and all that stuff, right? Because now I'm using up my voice and I'm trying to contain and all these different things. So my voice was just a wreck, but just to, fuck it. This is for Ami. I got to, played some guitar, sang to her, sang her to sleep when she had a nap that day. And, it was just, I can't tell you guys just what an amazing day I had and how thankful I am for it. And not everybody gets that. And death is a tough thing. And I guess all I can tell people is just, death is one of those things where it's hard regardless. It doesn't matter how prepared, how many books you've read. It's never easy. And that's what every book I've read has said that exactly. Don't think that by learning more about death, it's going to make it any easier when you go through it. But there's certain things that help you understand it and to ask those questions of what death is to you and what do you think happened, and just coming to terms with your own fear, not of other people. Well, definitely of losing others too, but about the fact that you're going to die one day. There's so much that one journey, that one hard set of questions you can ask yourself is going to manifest in so many other ways and make your life so much better and make you so much less reactionary and so much more self-assured and so much less self-conscious. I feel like, and I shouldn't say I feel like, this is what I've gleaned from reading those books, is our fear of our own mortality is such a big piece of who we are that we will erect an entire scaffolding around ourselves to prepare ourselves for it, right? And that used to be religion. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, it was religion, right? And when somebody attacks your religion, people always wonder, well, why do people react so hard, right? Like when the lead up to McGregor and Khabib was happening in the UFC, and there was so much bad blood, and people were acting, like Khabib, we've never seen him rattled, but then McGregor was talking about his religion, and you see this different version come out, and people wonder, well, people that don't understand religion will wonder, like, how can you be that attached to something or whatever? But it's one of those things where now that religion is your entire armor against the idea of mortality. That is what gets you through. That is what allows you to navigate the world without that immobilizing fear of that fact that you're going to die one day and everyone you know is going to die one day. And now people have their own religions, right? That's ideology. That's left and right? And that's what you see is people have their own. They build up these things in place of religion that are everything to them and is their whole identity. And then people attack this. And it's the same reaction that Khabib had to somebody attacking their religion is the same reaction when somebody attacks, this identity that you build up around yourself, whether it's your identity that you're changing the world because you're an anti-racist, if it's your identity that you're, you're the anti-left, the polar opposite of it's all the same things, of just building up these identities without addressing your own true core feelings. And there's so much merit that comes to that, and you're gonna be so much less reactionary and so much more self-assured. And so much of what you hate about yourself is moments where your own insecurities come out. And the biggest insecurity of them all, and almost all of your insecurities, go back to that one base insecurity, is you're insecure about your own mortality. And so much of your insecurities come from that place. And again, saying all this, this is the most noble of goals that you can take on. And to hear somebody like Ami be so, with no training, she's never read a book on this stuff. This is all just what she picked up in her 91 years that got her to this point. But to see her have all this knowledge that I've been reading about, and she has this just innately, she understands this and said it in her own words to these people, and to get to see, but it was like, oh no, she gets this. She understands, just like this thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around. She's already got it down. She's ready. And that was so inspiring to me. And so it took so much. It's still sad. You can see I'm still very sad about it, and it's never not going to be again. I can't stress that enough, but it is so nice to know that and see that. And it was such a gift that she could give her family to be that source of strength for all of us, to help us get through that. Because all somebody wants when they're passing is that their family and the people they care about that are going to get on and carry on lives and remember them and remember the lessons, but do it in a positive way. They don't want you to break down and not live your life and not enjoy it because they're gone. And she was allowed to, or she was able to pass on so much of that. And I really enjoyed that. So that's, my little tangent of that weekend. And then it was, having to head back later that week. I ended up going back to GP that night and then, trying to work and get all these things done and do podcast stuff. And, it was hard to keep my mind in it. And then to head back to got a call Thursday. Hey, you probably should head back to Edmonton. All the kids and all the grandkids are heading up. And that was time. We just missed the moment by probably an hour, rolled in. It was a pretty somber affair, but again, so much beauty and so much coming together with our family. And throughout COVID, all the extended family, we haven't seen each other as much, and just to reconnect with them and to see the grandkids that have grown so much. And kind of what I was talking about earlier with the Hancocks, of just seeing these little kids that were just defined their own unique way of who they are. It's just, I love kids so much, and I'm so excited to see who these little kids are going to grow up to be, and to see just more and more of that. You get more and more of an insight into who that is every time you see them, whether it's a month or a week. They're different, and it's so cool, and just to be able to have all the amazingness of that, and to see again my family, and to be able to be strong. One of the things Jordan Peterson talks about is being that source of strength at a funeral, right? Like being that person. It's a really hard goal, and it's a noble goal, is to be there when everybody else is at their lowest point, is to try and be a pillar of strength and to help other people through it. And just it's just like, if you can do nothing else in your life that you're proud of, that is one thing that you can try to be in your life, is when that need is arise. Like, it doesn't happen often, but in your life, when that need has arisen, you be there for that person. I feel like that's something that, just reading lately, I agree with that. And I feel like it's something I've tried to do in the past when there's been tragedies. I mean, when you grow up in a small town, it almost, everybody so well that any tragedy that happens to someone, you feel it just as well, and you have to be there for people. And it's probably going to impact you, but even if it just impacts people that are around you, that are really close to you, just finding those people that are going to need you in that moment, and to be that person, to always have that Superman costume on under your clothes for when that moment arises, to be that person when the right thing needs to happen, be that person that jumps in and does that. And it just, yeah. I don't know. I've talked about so many times how weird life is and the universe is, and how things fall into your lap. And when you get on the right path, certain things start showing themselves, and certain messages almost get sent to you, right? Like, you could look at it in a religious sense of, it's God sending you a message, or whatever words you find to that, because I feel like there's so much gets hung up on what words you choose to talk about these things that are almost universal in cultures all over. Just depends what book is popular around there, right? Is it the Bible? Is it the Quran? Is it this? Is it what? It's all the same shit, just with different words. I don't want to get caught up in the words, but to see what all this year has brought me, and what the podcast has brought me, and the lessons that I've learned, and the books that it's got me to read, and the people that I've listened to in preparation, and the ideas that I've shared, all prepared me and came so beautifully together with a moment like that. And not to say it didn't, throw me for a loop and have all these things that I need to get through to come out the other side of it. And I'm still not out the other side of it, and still, working through a lot of shit. But it's so cool, I guess, in one way, to see how it all comes together, and all that stuff that you've been doing that you didn't know was going to pay off ends up paying off in a way you never thought it would. So yeah, that was, and then had a weekend with them, did a lot of family stuff, just kind of had a whole family weekend at my parents' place in Edmonton, and got to have, some time in the hot tub, some really good food, some, watched some fights, some hockey games with the family, and got to, just reconnect with everybody. And it was a really amazing time. And, getting back to work after that was a little bit tough. And I just found that with all that stuff going on, and it was happening before, so I don't know how much to blame on that, but I was in a bit of a rut myself. I think it was definitely, sorry about being so throat clearing right on the mic there. I usually try and pull back. That was a bad one. Maybe I'll try and edit that one out. Probably forget. You probably just got the full earful there. Anyways, what am I talking about? Yeah, being in a little bit of a rut, and not in any way, like I'm still, doing everything that needs to be done, because there's a lot of things that came up lately with work. It's month end, it's year end, it's COVID. Like, just running a business is hard enough, but trying to run a business in COVID, where now a couple times a day you're finding out somebody's a close contact, you got to put this person off, right? Like, they're going to be down for 2 weeks, and then somebody gets off their 2 weeks is finally up, but they send them for another test, and they said, even if it comes back negative, this starts another 14 days. So now you have a single mother who needs this job and has just been told that they have to isolate for 28 days total. Like, I found that the mental stress of all this stuff going on, and people don't understand that too. There's so much that goes into this that isn't just, it's so easy just to say, oh, I'll lock everything down, everyone stays. No, that's not how this thing's work. And there's so much that comes with it. And just to be juggling all these other things. And I found that it's really, I've been really trying to work to protect my mental health. And one of the strategies I have for that is just to know when to say, fuck it. I just need to do with this for me. Like, just whatever. This is what I need right now. But it's dangerous, right? Because there's also a thing called the inner bitch. If you ever listen to Joe Rogan, you'll know about this. Everybody has it. It's that inner bitch that's telling you, no, it's okay to skip it, right? You don't need to get out of bed when that alarm goes at 6 a.m. You don't need to get up. You can work out later in the day. You can do all this stuff. And, you don't need to, that overhaul in this one area of work can wait for a couple months. You don't need to do it right now. You got year end stuff, or getting the podcast website done up, or getting the YouTube page caught up, starting streaming. All these different things you can push them off. And I realize that I'm going through a lot and I need to, but now where do you find that balance? Because now with protecting my mental health, and had a couple weekends where I like to plan my things if I'm going out on a big weekend like the Lloyd weekend, to be at home and have a weekend of recovery, because I'm very much an introvert and I need my recovery time. That's what I find I need to be at the best in all these aspects of my life, whether it's work or the podcast. I need my recovery to be that person and to be there for others, and to be that strength. I need to be filled up in my ways, right? But I found with all those just saying, no, fuck it, you're going through a lot and all this stuff, it trains you. Just like making those hard decisions is training you. So now this is just what I do. I get up at 6 a.m. and I run, right? Like, and then I, over that weekend, I had an injury to my foot. I had this weird thing. I don't know, it was an infection, and I couldn't run. So that was one of the things. Now I'm mad because now I'm not getting my exercise in. And I know I should be doing things that I can, like, just, doing some weights or, something else, but it's pretty debilitating foot injury. And it was a lot of anger, and I was dealing with a lot of stuff, and I was putting things off, and then I'm feeling inefficient, and I'm feeling like I'm not doing enough, where I'm always doing enough at work. Like, I feel like if you ask anybody else, or if I had a conversation with people at work, they'd be, and we talk about this all the time, is I'm never satisfied with what I'm doing in any domain. And I'm always thinking I'm not doing enough. So I know that I'm not letting things, and I haven't missed a podcast. I have lots of podcasts coming out, but it's just one of those things where I'm finding it's too easy to say fuck it, because I've been doing it with so many things, right? Like I didn't get up once at 6 a.m. to run this week. Obviously I couldn't run, but even to go, do some other exercise, and I missed, Monday and Tuesday I didn't work out at all. And then Wednesday, just did some yoga, and it was nice to get back into some DDPY yoga, Diamond Dallas Page. It's kind of manly yoga. I think I've talked about it a couple times in the podcast. Can't recommend it enough to people. It'd be one of those products I talk about where I would, be willing to bring it on the podcast as a sponsor, because, it's something I really believe in. It's one of those things. But so that was fun to do that. Threw in some kettlebell stuff. Actually started to work on that and kind of get back into it, and that was great. This weekend, did my first cold shower this weekend again, which I haven't done in a long time. And it's one of those things I hate doing it every single time. It sucks, especially after a couple weeks of not doing it. Trying to do it again this morning was the first time. Ooh, it is tough, but it's so good, because that's one of those moments where you have to make that decision to hop in that cold shower. It's so easy to not do it. It's so easy just to leave the warm on and just enjoy and listen to your music and do that, to put on a pump up song and crank that shit to cold and just do that full song of cold water. It's not fun, but it forces you to. And now when, you have that, I could probably, do this today or push off to tomorrow for work. No, you need to do it today, right? Like you've already started it. You had your cold shower, you did your things. And I just find that when you get into that rhythm of sloughing stuff off, everything starts to slough off. And this weekend I had such a big plan I was going to download a program to do video editing and start myself, because I just can't seem to find somebody to help full time to get my YouTube page up and running. Everybody else is busy, all the people I know still working on it, but I just figured I know I have the ability to do this video editing and get my YouTube channel caught up. I'm just not doing it because I don't think I have the time and I don't want to invest into it, but I just need to do that. And that was very disappointing for myself, not this weekend, not to jump onto that and do that. And probably going to maybe install a program later today and get the first steps towards it started. And actually have another guy that I've been talking to that might, be able to help in some ways, but just about taking those steps and doing that. I was very disappointed in myself for what I was bringing to the table, like I talk about at work, like if I talk to somebody at work, they'd say like, oh, you're doing all this stuff. Like you're doing great. Like, what are you talking about? It's all in your head. And I know that, but to me, I know what I'm capable of and what my full, like all these things that I could do. Like if I didn't have the podcast, what I could do at work would be so much different, but I know that. And I know that long-term, this is what's making me want to do this, or I know this is what I want to do long-term. But then there's also the fact that, I can't do everything I want to do with the podcast because I am giving the majority of my time to work and to go through all those things to know it's that inner bitch versus your mental health struggle, right? Like that, those two things, and keeping those balance of knowing what to do. If I have 100% of me that I can give, how much can I dedicate to this? How much can I dedicate to that? And how much am I running into the 110, 115 where I'm pushing myself too far and I need to back off? But then now knowing that, and knowing I only have so much, I need to be like, am I wasting my time by doing the video editing? Because, and am I wasting my time at work doing certain functions at work? And I have a plan in my head for ways to bring it into more balance and to get more efficient with the time I have at work, where I'm not just spending time doing things that other people could do, which is something from the second I started that job, that was something that my dad was telling me is, hey, if you're going to be in this role, you got to learn to delegate and you got to learn to let people try and let people make mistakes. But I have a thing about if my neck's on the line, right? Like if this is if it's going to reflect on me, I want to be in there and I want to have a say on it, and I can't let people have the full autonomy. And I'm trying to get better at it and I'm working on it, but it's one of those things where if I'm going to find this balance, I need to get better at that, and I need to find ways. It's just about doing it with time and patience and gratitude, the things I struggle with so much. I want everything to be done so early and be coming at the rate that I want it to. And I need to be grateful for what I've accomplished and to look back. And I'm coming up on a year of this podcast, and I'm excited to do a look back on what I've accomplished. Like what old books have I read? What old big podcasts affected me this year? What old podcasts were my favorite that I recorded? What have I learned from this podcast? What have I learned from work in the last year, from trying to run a business through COVID? What has that taught me? All these things. And I just think that's going to be amazing to do. And I think there's going to be a lot of gratitude to be found within it. And I just need to do that. But it's just, it's one of those things where I talk so much about self-accountability, and I still believe in that, and I know all those things, but you still have to be self-accountable to yourself on the mental health side too, right? Of holding yourself to that, to what you could be, and to really be always trying to strive for the full potential of what you could be, but also not killing yourself and not overstressing it and making it so you're not enjoying the process. It's finding that balance. And that's something I've been really battling as of late. And I feel like was really highlighted with that conversation with Sean Newman, like I talked about. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear maybe where some of this started and get a little bit more insight into that. Good old H2O. Whoa, what was that? I think my stomach just made a weird noise and scared myself. I thought I was hearing something coming through the window. Oh boy. The things you hear on this podcast that you don't hear anywhere else. Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on. Been amazing watching, like I kind of talked to a lot of UFC already, and there's some really exciting cards coming up. I've been so thankful to be a UFC fan right now, MMA fan. There's just so much action going on. The sport is just evolving at such a rapid pace that it's never boring. The amount of amazing things that can happen in one weekend. Like if you just look at that UFC 262 that I got to watch last weekend, like the Weidman leg injury, that was just so weird. Like the fact that there's been 3 of those on the main stage, full leg break kind of injuries, and that Chris Weidman has been involved in 2 of them. Once when it happened to him, once when it happened while he was kicking. He's been on both sides of it. It's just so weird. And the fact that it was with Uriah Hall, who just fought and retired Anderson Silva, who's the one that broke his leg on Chris Weidman's leg so many moons ago in the rematch, right? Like it's just so weird how it's all tied together to see Rose Namajunas, one of my absolute favorite fighters, like probably top 3. I've followed her for so many years now, and she's such a beautiful person and such an amazing mindset, and has such a good team, and just always leads with love, and has made me cry in almost every post-fight interview she's ever given. She just wants people to be good, and chases that and fights from that point, and is so knows what she has in skills, and knows what her full potential is, and knows that the only enemy in that cage is her. And if she can tap into that full potential of who she is on any given night, there's nobody that can stand in front of her. And she knows that. And to see that belief and to see it come out in such a good person is so amazing. And then to see Valentina Shevchenko, another one of those favorites. I got to see her fight in Edmonton years ago against Amanda Nunes, and I thought she won that fight. And I thought there was going to be a rematch right away, but they kind of went their other path. And Valentina's been undefeated since, and nobody's come close. And Amanda's been undefeated since, and nobody's come close. I just feel like Valentina is just now starting to get the props that she, for those in the know that she has been doing this for years and has been absolutely heads and tails above the competition for years now. And people are just starting to realize it now, and she's starting to get the star power and the fame that she deserves, and hopefully the money. This is something me and Andrew talked about a bunch, is the money in MMA, and just the steps that needs to take, and what's holding it back, and why it makes sense, and how it's kind of the natural evolution of a young sport like it is. But it's so amazing. And then Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal, that main event, to see. And this is what I said. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I called the fuck out of that shit. I said Valentina is going to dominate, maybe 2 rounds, she's done. I said Rose is the best. This was probably a little bit more biased than it was, because I think Weili Zhang is probably the toughest 115, best 115 that isn't named Rose Namajunas. And I thought it was going to be a war, but I thought, well, however it ends, Rose is going to come out on top. And then I said, you know what? In fact, I think Kamaru Usman's going to knock out Jorge Masvidal. And my buddy Chase, he said, you're fucking crazy. Like, not a chance. If somebody's knocking somebody out, it's going to be Jorge. But no, I just had a feeling. And I saw it in that Gilbert Burns fight with Kamaru Usman, with that much power, and just what a specimen of a fighter he is. His body is just, he can generate such power, and helped him so much with his wrestling career, and he uses wrestling so amazingly. But now he's with Trevor Whitman, who's just one of the best coaches in the sport, and is just this mastermind, and also it works with Rose and Justin Gaethje and all these other people. But to see how far his striking has come in these 2 fights that he's shown, the 2 fight camps he's done with Trevor Whitman, it is next level. And it shows that I don't know who's going to beat Kamaru Usman. I have no idea. But just to be able to say that, of like, almost, just to take hockey, for example, you get to see like a GOAT like Wayne Gretzky come around, right? And before, I don't know who it would have been before Gretzky. I don't know, Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr. I don't know. Probably Gordie Howe, I'd say, was probably the GOAT before Gretzky, but he was there for a long time. Then Gretzky came in, he was the GOAT for a long time. And now it seems like Connor McDavid is the closest. I don't think it'd be fair to compare him to Gretzky just yet, because of how much more he has to do, but eventually I think he's entering himself into that talk. But you're seeing the like, who is the GOAT transition over these 20-year time periods, right? Multi-decade dominant performances, where you're seeing in MMA, where if you just look in the last 10 years, the GOAT has changed hands so many times. It was John Jones, still arguably, and I'm one of those people that will probably still argue that John Jones, until somebody dethrones him, needs to be in that argument. I mean, you can say, his performance-enhancing drug violations can throw a wrench into that, and I definitely see that too. But, so John Jones, GSP, Khabib, Kamaru Usman, Anderson Silva, right? Like, there's been so many guys that had a real argument for being the best, and it happens almost on a yearly basis, it changing over. And I've talked about this a little bit of, you could see this with Kamaru Usman for so long, but just the way styles and things go in the promotion, unless you're that deep into it, you didn't realize that, oh yeah, nobody's wanted to fight Kamaru in years, right? Until he got onto the grand stage and was ranked high, and people kind of had their decision taken away from him. He couldn't buy a fight. Nobody would fight this guy, and you could see it. But now he's got to that pinnacle, and he's held himself there and done it the right way. And it's just, you don't know who's going to stop him. I'm so excited to see the future of what that is to bring. And yeah, so I've been just having an amazing time being a UFC fan as of late, MMA fan, being a huge fan, I don't know what to call it, but I feel like reward for all the years and years and years of pain of being an Oilers fan. I hadn't seen, they had their dominance in the 80s and after 93, when I was born, it was not a lot to cheer for. A couple exciting series against Dallas back in the day, had the 2006 run, which was cool as a little kid to be able to see, but then it was pretty dark days. And to these last 5 years since McDavid has gone onto this team, to be able to actually dive in and have something to be excited for, and to be able to say, like, yeah, I watch every Oilers game almost for the entire season now. Like, I would never have done that earlier in my time as an NHL fan. I'd, watch other games. I'd turn the hockey game off after 2 periods because the Oilers were sucking so bad and all that. And it's so much fun now to be able to be rewarded and be excited every night, regardless of what's going on. Something spectacular is going to happen out there. It is so much fun. Like, I don't know. I feel like probably eventually I will end up doing an Oilers podcast at some point. But like, just be able to talk. I could do a podcast after every win, like every Oilers win. I could sit there and break it down with somebody, even some of the losses, right? Like lately, which was something I never would have been able to say. Some of the losses this year have been just so hard fought and such good games. And I feel like the Oilers deserved it. And it's such a change from, it used to be that like they lose all the time. And even some of the wins, you couldn't even be proud of the win because they didn't deserve it at all. And they just got lucky, or the goalie was hot, or whatever it was, or McDavid scored like 19 goals in a game. So obviously you're going to win. They win 19-18. You know what I'm saying, right? But just, I feel so grateful to be an Oiler fan right now. And I feel like in the sports world, my life's going great. I feel like I couldn't ask for more than in my, and then to add on to that, something that maybe some people look down upon as being a sport, but League of Legends, one of my favorite video games, and one of the only video games that I follow professionally, and I have since 2013, I think I've watched each. So the way it works for professional League of Legends, I guess I should break it down, is there's different regions, right? There's the LCS, which is the North American League. There's the LEC, which is the European League. There's a Chinese League, a Korean League, Oceanic, which is like Australian stuff. There's a Brazilian League, and then there's a bunch of collegiate and all this stuff. But the big ones are all regionally dominated, right? And you play within it. You do a spring split, which is what just happened, and then there's playoffs. And whoever wins the playoffs goes to a mid-season tournament where, the North American representative, the European, the Chinese, the Korean, all these go and play in a tournament, which is happening soon. And then you go in and you play another regular season. It's called the summer split. And then there's a champion of that. And then a combination of those two splits and your finishes in the playoffs dictate who. Each region sends 3 teams to a World Finals, which is the biggest tournament of the year. It's kind of the Super Bowl, and then all the smaller regions kind of do a play-in for it to see who gets it. Or actually, I think each major region sends 2 teams, and then there's a play-in with the regional scene and the third team from the big regions that all play in. I think it changes all the time. Anyways, I don't think you guys need to know all that. Anyways, I've been watching this for quite a while. Haven't missed a Worlds. Have watched most of the mid-season, like the big tournaments, and then we'll probably usually watch the finals of the regular seasons for North America. Sometimes maybe Europe, but some maybe like I'll watch the Chinese final just because they're absolutely incredible. But I hadn't been watching much. Like I didn't watch much regular season, and my team is a team called Cloud9, and I've been watching them since 2013. They've been my favorite. They run their organization well. They bring in they bring guys up, kind of grassroots. I just really love the owner. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but I feel like since the time in 2013 when he first came in, this was all tiny, small potatoes. They're out of a small warehouse in LA, like promoting these games and stuff, and it wasn't all that big, to where it's gotten to now, where it's this huge, just like global powerhouse with, giant sponsorships and more viewership than any major sports league. Like they get way better viewership than NFL and all these other things. To see them do that and to have some down years, and they were very dominant when I first came in. And then again, just like the Oilers, any team that I cheer for, they have to have some dark days. I'm a mush. And they had just reached such highs that it was a failure to see them not achieve greatness almost every year with what they'd kind of set themselves up for. And they went out and made a move this summer and brought in one of the best players we've ever seen in Western League of Legends, right? He was a European guy. His name's Perks, and he was the best player, the most dominant in Europe, and was just absolutely smashing. He'd won everything in Europe the last couple of years with this team that was built around him. And now he's coming to North America, and they paid a lot of money for it. And this is kind of an uncharacteristic move of Cloud9, because they were always the homegrown talent. And it was always the other teams that I hated that would just pay for the most. They'd, drop $5 million on a player, which I know when you see like NFL salaries, it doesn't seem that much, but you're playing video games, you get paid $5 million a year. Anyway, I think they brought him in like perks for like almost $10 million a year this year, and it didn't work out right away. And the start of the split was a little rough, and they weren't clicking. And to see them get, and they were still a top team, right? They were a top team before they brought perks in, and they were a top team after it, but it wasn't all sunshine and daisies. And then to see them go into this finals, I didn't get to watch any of the playoffs, but I watched the finals, and it's a best of 5 game series, and it went all 5 games, and it was some of the best League of Legends I've seen. Like, just to see the evolution of how far they've come, and just mechanically how sound everybody is, and the decision making and the teamwork that goes into it. I feel like if you don't understand the game, like if you've just seen video games in general, like even if you play COD or something, like I can't even find a way to explain to you how dependent it is. Everybody has to be perfect. It's so close to sports. I can't even tell you, right? Like all the dynamics that go into it and all the training, right? Like these guys are putting in 10 hours a day of training, of playing, they have to work out to be able to make sure that they're in good enough shape to be able to pull off these training regimes and all this stuff. And they're practicing, they're doing these scrims against other teams and playing solo queue and just putting in these crazy hours. It's very much like a professional sport. And to see my guys, Cloud9, come through and win that final in the way that they did in the back and forth series, like they were up, then they were down, and 2-2, it's tied up going into game 5, and then on top of that, the type of League of Legends that was being played, just the high level of what I was seeing, it was so amazing to me. I'm just, again, grateful to be a fan. I'm grateful that I put in that time all those years ago in university when I got addicted to this video game just to figure out how it was. I'm still terrible at it. I'm the worst League of Legends player ever. I don't even play with people because I'm that bad. I just play against bots just for fun every once in a while. I mean, I do like, I shouldn't say that. I do like playing against people. I just only like playing against people if it's with people. Like if I had a group of 2 or 3 guys that wanted to go play, I would love to play and it'd be fun. But if I'm playing with myself against people get mad. They take it too serious. I just don't want to be a part of it. I just want to play for enjoyment. But yeah, it was awesome to see the LCS. So it's just kind of, my guys, Cloud9 winning, Edmonton Oilers, McDavid, absolutely dominant, like going to get 100 points this year. Been such a wild thing to watch. Watch so many of my favorites in the UFC really dominating and telling their story and being true to who they are. I feel like on a sports level, my life is going great. What are some other things, right? Oh, and another one of those things kind of in the same vein as the cold showers and the workouts and that thing that I brought back. I found that for a while there when I first started my podcast, I was really into breathing and breathing techniques and breathing through my nose and all these types of things. And I'd fallen off of that a lot as well. And just to kind of reset myself yesterday, I was in kind of a bad mood and I was mad at myself, and I knew I had lots of stuff to do and I was being lazy. And, it was kind of that really second guessing myself of, I feel like I really need just some time to reset, but I have so much stuff I need to do. Is this worth it? Am I making the right decision? All that. And I did, there's these 10-minute Wim Hof guided breathing techniques on YouTube. Anybody can type them in. I did one of those, and I've done them before, and they're very cool to do. I feel like everybody should try it at least once. And you do these 30 really deep, powerful breaths on a rhythm, and it has a number, like a graphic that blows up and goes down for like to match your breath to, and you do 30 of those, and then you let your breath out and you hold it. So not like taking a big deep breath in, but you just so hyperoxygenated and you hold your breath. And the first one's a minute, and then you do a breath in and hold that for 15 seconds. Then you go back into that breathing technique. Then you try and do it for a minute and a half. I didn't do a minute and a half. I think I did a minute 20. And then I had to take the deep breath in, go 15 seconds. Then you do a third round. It's another minute and a half. And you can go longer. You can pause it and go longer if you feel like you can. And I know some people might think, I can't hold my breath for a minute, but it's different. It's not like if you've ever tried, holding your breath competitions with the people where you're just taking a deep breath in and trying to hold it. It's a much different feeling, especially that you let the air out and you don't even feel like you have a breath in there. And it's just weird. Your hands get tingly, your body temperature changes, but you recognize that you don't need air. Like if you stay calm and you just, stay zen in that moment. I'd close my eyes and just listen, because there's audio with the thing too. I just close my eyes and just be there for that minute. It zips by, and it's the weirdest feeling, and it really resets you after. It resets your mood. I feel like for somebody to know that you can have that tool in your toolbox, that in 10 minutes you can change your whole day. If you're having a bad day, you can do this breathing, or if you're sluggish, or if you need whatever you need, if you need to get fired up before something, if you need to calm you down, there's so many ways you can do it. And that is just the very basics of the Wim Hof breathing stuff, and he does way more with it. But just to get you in the door and to show you what the power of your own breath can be, I feel like that is something I can't speak to enough. And again, that's one of those things where that would be one of those things where I could bring onto the podcast as a as a sponsor and feel really good about it one day. Oh man, there's so many things on this list that I wanted to talk to you guys about that maybe I could leave for another. I've already been going for an hour and 25 minutes. Holy shit. I usually am trying to keep these things to an hour, but I got so many things to talk about. What do I want to bring up? Really big moment for me on Monday with the episode that just released, having not sponsorships, but to be able to bring some things forward and kind of, I don't know. It's sponsorship light. I'll call it, right? I did my first intro to the podcast where I tried to highlight some things. One is my girlfriend, Alyssa. She just started her landscape architecture business, Open Air Collective Landscape Design, I think is the full title. It's going to be linked in the description and all that. But really proud of her to see her put the work in, not only to get her master's degree in landscape architecture and to be working in all these different experiences, or working in all these different areas to try and get the knowledge to be able to do it on her own. And I know the fear that can come along with trying to do something on your own and not following the traditional path of just going to get a job at some, architecture firm and do drafting for them and just drop their designs. No, she wants to do her own. She can, draw it all up and make it look pretty for you. But, if anybody wants to do their house, wants to redo their landscaping outside their house, their business, they're redoing a park, a patio, right? Like all these types of things that are outside, anything under the sun. She has a really good eye for it, and she's really passionate about it. And it's something that I think she wants to chase for a long time and really build into something. So I'm really proud of that, and I want to support her any way I can. And just mentioning on this podcast is my way to do it. So I was really excited to do that. And then also, with all the talk I did about the Lloydminster May and what's coming with that this month of trying to release a whole month of Lloydminster episodes, there's two of the guys that I did podcasts with, Ken Rutherford and Sean Newman, and a couple other guys. They're all going to be doing this over 1,000-kilometer bike trip to raise money for school children and programs and lunches and breakfasts and stuff, just with all the pain and suffering that we're seeing in our kids throughout this whole COVID thing. They really are impacted by that and want to do something to make a change. So they're doing this thing called Bike for Breakfast. I'll link that, link the social media pages for that. If you have, $20 kicking around that you could show towards that, it's a really good cause. It's some really, really good guys doing it. And I was really excited to be able to, promote them, and I'll probably be doing it all month long. It's coming up in June, but just for the entire month of Lloydminster May, hopefully, talk about it and raise some awareness. Maybe I'll come up with some things that I can do to raise some money myself to add on to that and just help them achieve their goal. I think it's a noble goal and something we should all be striving for. And just when you listen to them talk, they've also done a couple podcasts. I think they just released one where Ken came back on to Sean's podcast and they talked about the impetus behind it and where it comes from. And I think you'll really be able to see how genuine it is and that these guys really want to make a change and that they're coming from a really amazing place with this idea. So yeah, I was glad to put my my little voice behind it with this podcast here. That was exciting for me. Some really fun episodes. I think I talked about like earlier these Lloyd ones that are coming out. That NHL player that you guys can probably guess by this point. And then some cool guys on the books to get set up. And like I said, the YouTube page, I swear it's coming. I'm working on it. Whenever I can prioritize myself to find some time to learn that program and put them up, or if I can find somebody else that can come in and just help me get caught up, just say, here's the audio files, here's the video, just splice them together, throw my logo over the intro and outro and start firing them onto YouTube just to get caught up, because I'm so excited for, I just felt, it hurts me so much because I feel like there was so much momentum there and people were really enjoying the YouTube and being able to watch the podcast and have that easy. It's so easy to point people to YouTube to find it, right? For whatever reason, you'd think at this point it'd be easy, but Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all those things are hard for people to find. But you tell them YouTube, well, I've been on YouTube. I know how to run that bitch, right? And it's just so much less intimidating. So it's tough for me to see the podcast just in that one little area. It's still growing, and I'm so proud of the episodes that are coming out, but just the fact that something so silly as not getting them up on YouTube is holding people back from enjoying them. It's just eating at me. So I know that it's one of those goals that I need to just be patient with and be grateful for what I have. But it's one of those things that I'm working on. You don't got to tell me, like, don't say, oh, when's this episode going to be on YouTube? As soon as I promise you, as soon as it's physically possible for me to make that happen, I will. And same thing with streaming, right? Like that's one of those things where I definitely want to stream, and it's going to be something I do, and it's going to be video games and guitar and a bunch of other ideas. It's not going to be your traditional stream. I have really big ideas for what it can be, but there's just other things I need to prioritize over that right now. I know I was getting everyone excited saying, oh, it's going to be next week or end of the month and all that. I just need to make sure I'm getting all the other things and make sure that I'm fully giving everything I can to work and to the podcast to get those things up and running and to the point. And once I get some help or devise some plans to balance it out a little better, I'll constantly be adding these things on. I just got to do it at the right pace. And I feel like as soon as I say it out here that's going to happen, then for whatever reason, I get it in my head that I need to even address it. Probably you guys hadn't even put 2 and 2 together that was something I'd even been talking about. Maybe some of you that listen to every episode would pick up on it, but that's just me. This is what this is my opportunity to kind of get everything that's on my chest off my chest and out to you guys. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Already forgot 90% of the things I talked about. No, before I go, I just wanted to go over some of the podcasts that I've been listening to. This is one of those things where I'd love to get deeper into all these ones, but just some of my favorites that I've listened to over the past couple of weeks that I think you guys should listen to. For Joe Rogan, he had a guy on named Dave Smith, who's a comic. I posted about it. Dave Smith I've been listening to for years now. He does an episode a year with Ari Shaffir, one of my favorite comedians, where they do a State of the Union, and they talk for 3 or 4 hours about exactly what's happening that year, the behind-the-scenes politics stuff. Just a very deeply involved guy. Knows a lot of the inner workings about the real people with power and what's really going on when you see what the news is telling you is the reasons behind this. He really knows the real truth. And he went on, and that's when you start to see them go after Rogan like they do it's almost on a timer. Every time somebody controversial comes on Joe Rogan, they try and cancel him, and it crashes and burns and makes them look bad. And I thought that was the one. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, Dave Smith's on. That's why they're going after Joe Rogan. Then he had a guy on named Josh Rogan. And I'm thinking, who is this guy? Like, did they just have him on because he has the same name as Rogan? Like, who is this guy? So Josh Rogan is this investigative journalist. He's been working for, I think, almost 20 years in journalism, and really dropped some bombshells on COVID and what's going on with it, and what's some of the impetus behind this, and how it's been covered up, how it's about 99.9999999 certain that it came from a lab, and all the different ways it's been covered up, and the investigation they sent over there is all these buddies. And a big reason behind it is that so much of that gain of function research that created this disease was put forward by American research with these American doctors that are now at the head of the reaction to COVID and are making all the calls on what we need to do and are using it to cover their own ass because they don't want to be implicated. It's so game changing. You need to watch this episode. Josh Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience. I know it's only on Spotify. I know Spotify is an absolute dog shit podcast platform. And I hate it too. And I hate that it pauses and it buffers and all that stuff, but it's so worth it. You need to listen to it. This is why I wish there was every couple of episodes, Joe Rogan had negotiated in where he could put it out on YouTube for free, because I feel like a podcast like that Josh Rogan one is so important for people to hear, that they, that it'd be worth it just for the whatever money they would lose to put it out to the masses, kind of like Sam Harris does with his free paid platform, where he puts them out for free, but then every once in a while, or half the podcast out for free and makes you pay for the rest, but then every once in a while he'll put out a free one in its entirety because it's important and he feels like the message needs to come across. And I feel like they could do that with Joe Rogan. That'd be awesome. Other than that, Matty Matheson, one of my favorite YouTube cooks. He does amazing shows. Check him out. He was on Rogan. Just the coolest guy, cool story. Check him out. You will not regret it. Dave Smith, I already talked about. Wonderboy Thompson, a UFC fighter, one of the best dudes in the world. If you love MMA, check that episode out. Gordon Ryan, again, the best jiu-jitsu player in the world right now. That was really interesting to hear his take on things. I have Dr. Phthalates written down. I think her name is Dr. Shaw, maybe. She talks about all the dangers that are in plastics in our world and how it's affecting reproduction and sperm counts and all these things. And it was absolutely terrifying. Scared the fuck out of me. But it was very important. And I feel like it's sad when something that important is only being put out on Joe Rogan. But I'm so glad that Joe Rogan's there to put these things out, and it makes it so hurtful when people go after him that don't listen to him and just try and paint him as this bigot and all these things and say he's everything he's not. when he's only growing and only more people that are really listening to him and giving him the full 3 hours, not watching a couple minute clip and making a decision that's been cut and clipped and all this stuff. Listen to him in his full 3 hour form and you'll realize what's going on. Some of my favorite flagrant twos with Andrew Schultz, my favorite comedian right now. He had Jordan Peterson on. That was a big mind blower for me, just to see that, my favorite comedian and my favorite, I don't know what you call Jordan Peterson, I don't know, psychologist, I guess, whatever Jordan Peterson is, to see them two come together and the hilarity that ensued and the ideas that were put forward was really fun to watch. Also seeing them have Kamaru Usman on again. Flagrant 2 is amazing. They knock everything out of the park. I feel like their MMA is terrible. They have no idea what they're talking about, but they love the sport so much that they have no idea what they're talking about. That's the one place that they actually drop the ball. But it's really interesting to see them have somebody on like Kamaru Usman and just for them to pretend they know what they're talking about with MMA and the funniness that comes out and all that. Then Lex Friedman, he had George St. Pierre on. Another big one for me. Really impactful to kind of get more deep into the mindset of who George St. Pierre is and was as a fighter. And now that he is confident in his retirement, to let all his tips and tricks out of the bag and to see just how much he was putting into that career and why he was so dominant. It's really cool to see. And that was by no means luck. Like, he had so much going and so much little things that gave him that extra tiny little inch above the competition. It was very interesting to see. And then last one before I let you guys go is the Lex Friedman episode with Michael Malice and Yaron Brook. Michael Malice is someone I found through Lex Friedman, who's kind of an interesting cat. I feel like he's very controversial. He is controversial on purpose to weed out people that he just doesn't care who likes him or doesn't like him, and he does things his way, and he says things that are inflammatory, but he's extremely brilliant, and he has a very strong mind, and he's a very accomplished arguer. So it's funny to watch him have these controversial ideas, but there's so little people that can combat him mano a mano, putting their ideas against his, that although I don't agree with all of his ideas, I agree that he believes them and has amazing backup for them. And then Yaron Brook is the head of the Ayn Rand Institute, that book I mentioned earlier, The Fountainhead, with Howard Rourke, and that architect that did things his way and wasn't fancy, didn't beg for work ever, just, said, this is what I think is good. This is my values. This is what I'm standing for. If you want to hire me, this is what I'll build you, and you'll be more than happy with it, but I'm not going to beg. So that was written by Ayn Rand, and she has this whole philosophy of objectivism and what that means. And I feel like, again, almost like with Michael Malice's, I believe so much in Ayn Rand's ideas and objectivism to a point, but I feel like it misses also a couple other points. And there's, an aspect of faith, even that I talked about with Ethan Rubin, the episode that just released last Friday, that I think is missing from objectivism. And, to hear those two go head to head on Lex's podcast, I've never seen a Lex podcast where Lex talks so little. It was just those two kind of going back and forth, but it really pushed both Michael and Yaron to the brinks of where their knowledge base lies, and really pushed them in ways that I don't think they had ever been pushed before. And it really pushed their own ideas. I think that was the best I've ever heard of Michael Malice, and the best I've heard of Yaron Brook, and the best, and in that sense, Ayn Rand, because he's the one that's, taking her flame. She's been dead for many years, and her ideas live on. And for somebody that's still so passionately fighting for them and showing the world what she was bringing, right, and what she was writing back in the 30s and 40s, it's truly amazing. And I really took a lot out of that podcast. I teared up probably 4 or 5 times. I was driving home from Edmonton, and obviously there was other shit going on, so I was in an emotional state, but just to hear the beauty of that conversation, it probably made me tear up 4 or 5 times. And I'm smacking the steering wheel and yelling at my girl, like, this is what, this is what they're talking about. This is the real stuff. This is what the world needs, and all this. So that's another one that I can't recommend enough. You got to check that one out. If any of those sound interesting to you, if you just want to laugh, Maddie Matheson, if you want to know what's really going on in the world, Josh Rogan and Dave Smith on Joe Rogan. If you want to know more about Ayn Rand and anarchism and Michael Malice, check out Lex Friedman's episode there. Or if you're just a big fan of GSP, check him out on Rogan or Lex. He did both just recently, and they're both amazing episodes. I think he's just one of those minds that we don't really realize how powerful he is until he's gonna have many more years to articulate just how amazing what he did in the UFC and what he's doing now wherever he goes is gonna be. yeah, so that's kind of the catch up on the podcast that really meant something to me. Like I said, there's so many things on this list I want to go over with you guys, but I'll maybe leave them for the next solo episode because it's already been an hour 40, and I want these solo episodes to be a little shorter and easier for you guys to digest, so it's not a 3-hour interview. But now I'm bringing them into 2 hours anyway. So, all right, thank you guys so much, and see you guys in the next one. Bye. Oh, still recording. Didn't hit the audio. End. 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 Hit the audio. End.